at my mother-in-law's 65th birthday dinner, at the most exclusive rooftop restaurant in Manhattan, my chair was nowhere to be found. My husband Daniel just shrugged and said, "Oh, looks like we're one short," as his entire family exchanged knowing glances. I smiled sweetly and said, "Clearly I'm not wanted here," and walked straight out. 35 minutes later, they discovered I had systematically canceled every single arrangement for her week-long birthday celebration. Their faces went from smug satisfaction to absolute horror when they realized what I had done. "Seems I'm not wanted here," I repeated to myself as I stood in that gleaming elevator, descending from the penthouse restaurant where the Morrison family had just made it crystal clear that after 4 years of marriage, I was still considered an outsider. The words echoed in my mind as I watched the city lights blur past the glass walls. Their calculated exclusion wasn't an accident. It was a message. And the message was received loud and clear. But what they didn't know was that I had been planning for this moment longer than they could have imagined. Every detail, every backup plan, every contingency had been meticulously prepared. Because when you build your career on managing high-stakes events for New York's elite, you learn to always have an exit strategy. My name is Isabella Rodriguez Morrison, and until 35 minutes ago, I thought I was finally part of the Morrison family dynasty. But as I stood in that restaurant, watching 14 family members take their seats at a table that mysteriously had only 13 chairs, I realized I had been living in a carefully constructed illusion. The humiliation burned through my veins like molten steel as I exited the restaurant. But not a single tear fell. Instead, I felt an eerie calm take over as I pulled out my phone and opened the event management app one built my empire on. I had 35 minutes before they'd realize what I was doing, and that was more than enough time to dismantle everything they held dear. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for joining me on this incredible journey of self-discovery and unexpected strength. Sometimes the most transformative moments come when we finally stop trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for us. If you've ever felt like you're constantly proving your worth to people who have already decided you don't belong, this story will resonate deeply with your soul. Before we witness how a successful Manhattan event coordinator turned a moment of public humiliation into the most satisfying revenge of her life, hit subscribe to join our community of survivors who understand that sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. Now let's step behind the curtain of a marriage built on appearances and a family determined to maintain their bloodline purity at any cost. 4 years ago, I was Isabella Rodriguez, the founder of Prestige Affairs, the fastest-growing luxury event planning company in Manhattan. I had built my reputation from absolutely nothing, starting with quinceañeras in the Bronx and working my way up to planning galas for Fortune 500 companies. My specialty was creating unforgettable experiences that left clients speechless, and my attention to detail was legendary throughout the industry. Every billionaire's wedding, every charity auction, every product launch that mattered in New York had my invisible signature all over it. My client list read like a who's who of Manhattan's most powerful families, and my waiting list stretched 6 months into the future. That's how I met Daniel Morrison at the Metropolitan Museum of Art Gala I had orchestrated for the American Cancer Society. He was standing near the Egyptian wing, looking impossibly handsome in his custom-tailored Armani tuxedo, with sandy brown hair that caught the ambient lighting just right and green eyes that seemed to see straight through all the pretense and social theater that surrounded us. "You're the mastermind behind all this magic," he said, gesturing to the transformed Great Hall where A-list celebrities mingled with tech billionaires under crystal chandeliers that cast rainbow prisms across ancient marble floors. "My mother has been trying to book you for 8 months. She says you're the only planner in the city who truly understands what it means to create art from celebration." Daniel Morrison came from Manhattan royalty, the kind of generational wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Their family name was engraved on hospital wings throughout the city. Their great-great-grandfather had built Morrison Holdings from a small textile operation into a real estate and finance empire that now controlled entire blocks of prime Manhattan real estate. They had that particular brand of wealth that spoke in whispers and influenced policy over private dinner parties at their various estates. The Morrison fortune was the kind that survived market crashes and world wars, growing stronger with each generation. Our romance began like something from a classic Hollywood film. Daniel pursued me with the kind of old-world charm and attention to detail that made my practical entrepreneurial heart flutter like a teenager. He would send handwritten notes delivered by private messenger, arrange intimate dinners at restaurants that had been booked solid for months, and surprise me with weekend getaways to family properties in the Hamptons, Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod, and their private estate in the Adirondacks. There were warning signs, of course, subtle at first but unmistakably present, like hairline cracks in an otherwise perfect facade. The way his mother, Catherine Morrison, would smile when introduced to me, a smile that never quite reached her ice blue eyes. The carefully worded comments about my background and heritage. How refreshing it is to meet someone so hardworking and ambitious, she would say, with just enough emphasis on hardworking to make it sound like a character flaw rather than an admirable quality. The surprised looks when Daniel brought me to family gatherings at their Fifth Avenue penthouse, as if they couldn't quite process that he was serious about the Latina girl who had built her own business from nothing. "You've done remarkably well for yourself, dear," Catherine said during our first formal dinner at their private dining room, her voice carrying that particular tone wealthy white women perfected when they wanted to sound supportive while being completely condescending. "Self-made success is so very American these days, isn't it?" I ignored these microaggressions and subtle put-downs because I was falling deeply and completely in love with Daniel, and he seemed genuinely different from his family, more progressive, less concerned with bloodlines and social hierarchies, more interested in building something meaningful together. When he proposed on the rooftop garden of our Tribeca loft with the entire Manhattan skyline glittering like diamonds behind him, I said yes, despite the growing certainty that I was entering a world specifically designed to exclude people like me. The wedding was naturally the social event of the season, covered by Town and Country, and featured in the New York Times Sunday Style section. I planned most of it myself, using every contact, favor, and professional relationship I had cultivated over 8 years in the luxury events industry. Catherine had strong opinions about absolutely everything. The venue wasn't traditional enough for Morrison family standards according to some invisible social protocol that had been passed down through generations. The menu was too fusion, too modern, too reflective of my heritage. The guest list was missing several old money families who should have been included based on decades of social obligation. I compromised where I could and held firm where my integrity and cultural identity were at stake. Daniel played peacekeeper throughout the process, but I noticed he rarely contradicted his mother directly when the conflicts really mattered. When it came to choosing between keeping his mother happy and supporting his future wife's vision. After the wedding, the subtle undermining became systematic and increasingly sophisticated. Despite regularly hiring my company for their numerous social obligations, the Morrison family constantly questioned my professional decisions, made last-minute changes that created logistical nightmares, and took credit for my most innovative ideas. At family gatherings and social events, my professional opinions were solicited with great ceremony, then dismissed without consideration. My background in event planning was consistently treated as a charming hobby, rather than a multi-million-dollar business that employed 15 people and generated 8-figure annual revenue. "Isabella has such a natural eye for entertaining," Catherine would tell her society friends while patting my hand like I was a well-trained pet. "It's almost like having our own personal party coordinator right here in the family." Daniel never defended me when these moments happened. He would shrug it off later and tell me that's just how his mother was, that I shouldn't take these things personally because family dynamics were complicated. But it was deeply personal, and it became more personal as the years passed and the pattern never changed. When Catherine announced she wanted to celebrate her 65th birthday with an elaborate week-long extravaganza throughout Manhattan, I should have recognized it as my opportunity to finally prove myself worthy of the Morrison name and social standing. Instead, it became the carefully orchestrated stage for my most public humiliation and ultimately my most satisfying revenge. The celebration was supposed to be my professional masterpiece, a 7-day series of increasingly exclusive events culminating in a dinner at Skyline, the newest rooftop restaurant that had a 9-month waiting list and required personal references from existing clientele, just to be considered for a reservation. I leveraged every relationship I had painstakingly built over 6 years of high-end event planning to secure impossible reservations, arrange private shopping experiences with personal stylists at Bergdorf Goodman, and coordinate with vendors who normally required a full year of advance notice. It was during this intensive planning process that I discovered the first serious cracks in the Morrison family facade. Payments for confirmed venues were mysteriously delayed. Vendors called my office asking about outstanding invoices that should have been settled weeks earlier. When I mentioned these concerning patterns to Daniel, he dismissed my growing concerns, saying the family accountant was just being extra cautious with large international expenditures. But I had inadvertent access to financial statements that told a completely different and much more alarming story. Failed real estate investments. Properties leveraged far beyond their actual value. Lines of credit stretched dangerously close to their limits. The Morrison fortune wasn't nearly as solid and unshakable as their carefully maintained public reputation suggested. Still, I continued planning and coordinating, using my own company's established credit lines and hard-earned vendor relationships to ensure Catherine's celebration would be absolutely flawless. I told myself it was a temporary cash flow issue, that once the birthday week was over, Daniel would sit down and explain the family's financial situation, and we would figure out solutions together as partners. I never imagined that my meticulous planning efforts were actually setting the stage for my own systematic destruction and public elimination from the family. Then came the morning of the milestone birthday dinner. Daniel was in our marble bathroom shower when his phone lit up with an incoming message. I had never violated his privacy before in 4 years of marriage, but something about the timing and secrecy made me look. The message preview was from someone named Ashley Whitman, and the content was crystal clear. Can't wait to celebrate tonight properly. Have you finally broken the news to her yet? My hands moved without conscious thought, opening the complete message thread with Ashley Whitman, Daniel's college girlfriend from Harvard, the woman Catherine had always considered the perfect genetic and social match for her precious son. The messages went back months. Detailed plans for rekindling their romance. Discussions about the Morrison family's mounting financial problems. And yes, explicit mentions of divorce papers already prepared and reviewed by the family's longtime attorney. The timeline was devastating and meticulously planned. Daniel had been orchestrating our divorce since before Catherine's birthday planning had even begun. The elaborate celebration wasn't just about Catherine turning 65. It was carefully designed to be the elegant backdrop for announcing the end of our marriage in front of everyone who mattered in their exclusive social circle. I took detailed screenshots, forwarded everything to my personal email, then carefully deleted all evidence from his phone. I finished packing for the dinner with steady hands and a mind that was already calculating 3 steps ahead. Standing outside that restaurant 35 minutes ago, I made my choice. I wouldn't confront Daniel before the dinner. I wouldn't give them the emotional dramatic scene they clearly expected. Instead, I would let their carefully choreographed plan unfold exactly as they had scripted it. And when the perfect moment came, I would be ready with my own surprise ending. The dinner was scheduled to begin promptly at 7:30 p.m. I arrived early, as any true professional would, to personally ensure every single detail was absolutely perfect. The restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking panoramic views of Central Park and the glittering Manhattan skyline. The Morrison family had specifically requested their usual preferred table, the large circular arrangement that accommodated their extended family perfectly, while maintaining the intimate atmosphere Catherine demanded. I personally confirmed the seating arrangement, double-checked the champagne selection, and approved the 9-course tasting menu that Catherine had insisted upon after 3 separate consultations. Everything was flawless and professionally executed, except for one carefully orchestrated detail that I had not planned. When the Morrison family arrived in their typical convoy of black Mercedes sedans, Catherine looked absolutely radiant in vintage Valentino with the family's heirloom diamond necklace catching the restaurant's carefully designed ambient lighting. Daniel looked handsome as always in his custom tuxedo, but I could detect the subtle tension around his eyes and the way he avoided direct eye contact. He knew tonight was the night he would announce our divorce to the assembled family. They had scripted every detail perfectly. Make it appear completely mutual. Cite irreconcilable differences. Maintain the family's impeccable social standing while quietly and elegantly ushering out the unsuitable wife. One by one, family members took their designated seats around the table. Daniel's sister Rebecca with her investment banker husband James. His brother Christopher with his society wife Patricia. The numerous aunts, uncles, and influential cousins who formed the Morrison inner circle and power structure. I followed behind Daniel, watching as everyone found their carefully assigned spots around the table. That's when I noticed the glaring discrepancy. My engraved place card was completely missing. My chair had been deliberately removed. The table was set for 13 when it should have accommodated 14. For a moment, I stood there completely frozen as animated conversations continued around me. Family members studiously avoiding any eye contact. The waitstaff who had personally confirmed my seating arrangement just hours earlier looked genuinely uncomfortable but remained professionally silent. The performance was beginning exactly as someone had meticulously rehearsed. "Is there some kind of problem?" Catherine asked with practiced innocence, her voice carrying just enough volume to draw everyone's attention to my standing figure. "There seems to be an issue," I said, keeping my voice perfectly steady and controlled. "My place setting appears to be missing." The meticulously choreographed scene unfolded like a well-rehearsed Broadway production. Confused murmurs rippling around the table. Rebecca examining the seating arrangement as if this was the first time she was noticing any discrepancy. Christopher clearing his throat and suggesting there might be some miscommunication with the restaurant's reservation staff. Then Daniel delivered his perfectly timed line with the casual dismissiveness that made my skin crawl. "Oh, looks like we're one short," he said with a slight shrug, as if this was a minor inconvenience rather than a calculated public insult. "I guess someone miscounted somewhere along the way." The family's gentle, knowing laughter was the final confirmation I needed. This wasn't an innocent oversight or administrative error. It was the carefully planned opening act of my public elimination, designed specifically to make me appear dramatic and unstable when I inevitably caused the scene that would justify their decision to cut me loose from the family permanently. My gaze moved slowly and deliberately around the table, cataloging each face and storing the memory. Catherine triumphant behind her birthday smile. Rebecca and Christopher, clearly enjoying the unfolding spectacle. Their spouses, visibly uncomfortable but completely complicit. The extended family members who had never truly accepted me anyway. And Daniel, my husband, the man who had promised to love, honor, and protect me. Watching with the detached clinical interest of someone observing a carefully planned social experiment. I could have demanded a chair. Could have created the dramatic emotional outburst they obviously expected. Could have given them the perfect unstable wife narrative they needed for their predetermined divorce story. Instead, I smiled with genuine warmth and delivered the line that would begin my carefully planned counterattack. "Clearly, I'm not wanted here," I said, letting the words hang in the air like a perfectly timed musical note that resonated through the suddenly silent dining room. The confident smiles around the table faltered noticeably. No one had expected me to be so direct, so calm, so utterly in control of my emotions and response. I'll see myself out, I added, turning away with the dignity and grace that had carried me through 4 years of microaggressions and subtle family warfare. Daniel called after me, delivering another clearly scripted line. Isabella, don't be dramatic. We can figure this out somehow. I didn't respond or even acknowledge his performance. I walked through the restaurant with my head held high, nodding politely to the maitre d', who had witnessed the entire carefully orchestrated scene. In the elevator, I finally allowed myself one deep breath, then another. By the time I reached street level, my hands had completely stopped shaking, and my mind was crystal clear about what needed to happen next. A small, intimate wine bar directly across from the restaurant offered the perfect strategic vantage point. I ordered a glass of their finest Barolo and pulled out my phone. This was the precise moment I had been mentally preparing for during months of planning, the 35 minutes of complete freedom, while the Morrison family congratulated themselves on their successful public humiliation of the unsuitable daughter-in-law. First, I opened my comprehensive event management application and began the systematic destruction of Catherine's birthday week. Every reservation, every carefully arranged experience, every meticulously orchestrated detail that I had spent countless hours planning would disappear with a series of strategic phone calls. The private shopping appointment at Bergdorf Goodman, canceled with profuse apologies about a sudden family emergency. The exclusive Broadway show tickets for tomorrow night, returned to the box office with a full refund. The luxury spa day at the exclusive wellness center on the Upper East Side canceled, citing unexpected illness. The private yacht charter for the weekend adventure, deleted with a 48-hour cancellation policy that would cost them thousands in penalties. The wine tasting experience in the Hamptons canceled. The private guided museum tour at the Frick Collection canceled. The reservation at Le Bernardin for Friday night's intimate family dinner, completely eliminated. Each cancellation felt like lifting a tremendous weight off my shoulders. With every professional phone call I made, I felt more like my authentic self, and less like the woman who had spent 4 years trying to squeeze herself into spaces that were never designed for her. The emails from Daniel began arriving exactly on schedule. First confused, then annoyed, then increasingly frantic as he slowly realized what was systematically happening. Isabella, where did you go? This is completely ridiculous. Then, come back right now. We need to talk about this situation. Then, what the hell are you doing? The hotel concierge just called about tomorrow's arrangements. Then, call me immediately. This isn't funny anymore, and this needs to stop. I ignored every single message and continued my methodical dismantling of Catherine's perfect celebration week. 33 minutes after I had walked out of that restaurant, I finished my wine, paid the bill with cash, and prepared for the finale. I crossed the busy street and entered the restaurant through the main entrance, walking with the confidence and authority of someone who had every right to be there. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. Mrs. Morrison, he said with genuine professional concern, is everything all right with your party? I smiled warmly and professionally. I need to speak with the general manager about tonight's arrangements if you don't mind. Within moments, Roberto, the restaurant's general manager, appeared at my side, looking appropriately concerned about any issue that might affect his establishment's sterling reputation. Mrs. Morrison, what can I do for you this evening? I explained the situation calmly, and with complete professional authority. There had been an unexpected family emergency. The birthday celebration would need to be canceled immediately. I was the primary account holder, the person who had made all the arrangements and coordinated all the details, and I was exercising my contractual right to cancel the event. Roberto looked confused but maintained his professional demeanor. Mrs. Morrison, are you absolutely certain about this decision? The deposit was quite substantial, and the arrangements took months to coordinate. Yes, I'm completely certain, I replied, handing him my business card along with comprehensive documentation proving my legal authority over all the arrangements. This contains proof of my authorization to make any changes to reservations made under my company's account. The Morrison family will need to make their own arrangements from this point forward. What Roberto didn't know was that I had been systematically building relationships throughout Manhattan's exclusive hospitality industry for over 6 years. He had worked with me on multiple previous events for other high-profile clients throughout the city. Our professional relationship and mutual respect transcended this one awkward family dinner. "When should I inform the table?" he asked with appropriate discretion. I checked my phone. Exactly 35 minutes had passed since I left the dining room. "Give me just 2 minutes to position myself strategically. Then you can deliver the news." I found the perfect vantage point near the restaurant's elegant bar area, with a completely clear view of the Morrison family table. They were in the middle of an elaborate toast to Catherine, champagne glasses raised high, faces absolutely glowing with self-satisfaction over their successful elimination of the unwanted daughter-in-law. The first course had just been served. The imported Kushi oysters that Catherine had specifically requested, along with the 2018 Dom Perignon that Daniel had personally selected and insisted upon. My phone buzzed with yet another message from Daniel. "Isabella, this has gone far enough. Come back immediately and stop being childish about this." I texted back a single comprehensive message. "All arrangements for the entire week have been systematically canceled. Enjoy explaining that situation to your mother and her guests." Then I settled in to watch the show. Roberto approached the table with 2 senior staff members. He leaned down to speak quietly and discreetly with Daniel, who was seated in the position of honor directly next to his mother. Initially, the family continued their celebration, paying minimal attention to what appeared to be routine restaurant business. Daniel's expression changed first, from polite attention to confusion, then to something approaching genuine panic. He pulled out his Black American Express card, speaking more animatedly with Roberto. The manager shook his head politely, showing Daniel something official on a tablet device. By now, the entire table had noticed the growing disruption. Catherine set down her champagne flute, her regal posture betraying the first hints of serious concern. Rebecca was whispering urgently to her husband while Christopher had his phone out, presumably trying to verify what was happening. The scene unfolded like a perfectly choreographed performance art piece. Daniel stood abruptly, his face flushed with embarrassment and barely controlled anger. Catherine's manicured hand flew to her throat, clutching her pearl necklace as if it could somehow anchor her to reality. Rebecca looked like she might actually faint, and Christopher was frantically scrolling through his phone. The extended family members sat frozen, completely uncertain whether this was part of some elaborate birthday surprise or a genuine unfolding crisis. My phone rang. Daniel calling now, not texting. I answered on the second ring. "Isabella," he hissed, his voice a perfect mixture of fury and growing desperation. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Clearly, I'm not wanted here," I repeated with perfect calm and control, so I systematically removed myself from all family celebrations. "You need to fix this disaster right now. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for my mother and our entire family?" "I have exactly the idea, Daniel. That was precisely the point. Where are you right now?" His voice shifted to pure panic. "We need to talk immediately. I can explain about Ashley, about everything that's happening." "I'm sure you can explain everything," I replied, watching as he paced frantically near the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. "The problem is, I've already seen the divorce papers, Daniel. I've seen all the financial statements. I know about the offshore accounts. I know the Morrison empire is crumbling, and I know you've been systematically planning to blame me for everything." His sharp intake of breath confirmed what I already suspected. He had completely underestimated me, just as his entire family had for 4 years. Those documents were completely private, he said weakly. Yes, they were private. Just like the text messages about rekindling old flames. Just like the detailed script about announcing our amicable divorce. Just like the seating chart that deliberately excluded me from my own family celebrations. Silence on the other end of the line. In the restaurant, I could see absolute chaos unfolding as Roberto now addressed the entire table. Several other diners were openly staring. The Morrison family's public humiliation was becoming a genuine spectacle in exactly the kind of exclusive venue where their carefully maintained reputation mattered most. Isabella, please. Daniel's voice had lost all its privileged confidence. You don't understand what this will do to our family's social standing and business relationships. I understand perfectly, I said. And that's exactly why I did it. We can work this out somehow. Come home, and we'll figure everything out together. No, Daniel. I don't think we can work this out. I ended the call and watched as he rushed back to the table. His family's faces turning toward him with expressions ranging from fury to genuine terror. I finished my wine, took one final look at the beautiful chaos I had systematically created, and walked out into the Manhattan night feeling lighter and more authentic than I had felt in 4 years. I left New York the next morning, not permanently, but for a much-needed solo vacation, using the frequent flyer miles I had accumulated from planning Morrison family trips over the years. The irony wasn't lost on me as I upgraded myself to first class on a direct flight to Santorini, where I had always dreamed of going but never found the time or permission. Behind me, I left a family in complete financial and social meltdown. Through my extensive network of hospitality contacts throughout the city, I learned that the Morrison family had ended up paying for their abruptly canceled dinner using Catherine's vintage Bulgari bracelet as collateral until they could somehow arrange emergency funds. By the following morning, word had spread throughout Manhattan's tightly connected exclusive restaurant scene that the illustrious Morrison family was experiencing serious, undisclosed financial difficulties. Vendors who hadn't been paid in months began demanding immediate settlement, rather than accepting vague promises and delays. My phone was flooded with messages ranging from legally threatening to genuinely pathetic. Christopher, this is legally actionable behavior. Our family attorney will definitely be in touch. Rebecca, you've made the biggest mistake of your entire life. When Daniel divorces you, you'll get absolutely nothing. Catherine's message was the most revealing and showed her true character. I always knew you were common and inferior. This vindictive display proves everything I said about your character and breeding. But it was Daniel's increasingly desperate messages that told the real story of a family in complete financial and social collapse. First, you have no idea what you've done. Mother had to be hospitalized. Then, the Wellington family witnessed everything. Do you know what this means for our social standing and business relationships? Later, the bank is demanding immediate payment on 7 properties. They say our credit line is permanently frozen. And finally, please Isabella, I'm begging you. It's not just about our marriage anymore. There are serious legal implications for the entire family. I didn't respond to any of their increasingly frantic communications. Instead, I forwarded all the financial documents I had systematically gathered to my attorney with detailed instructions to prepare for what would inevitably be an extremely messy and public divorce. When I returned to New York 3 weeks later, completely tanned and refreshed from my solo Mediterranean vacation, I found divorce papers waiting, along with a settlement offer that was so laughably insulting it confirmed they still thought they could buy me off. Still believed I was motivated by the same material desires and social climbing ambitions that drove their fundamentally corrupt existence. The divorce proceedings were swift, brutal, and completely devastating for the Morrison family's carefully constructed public image. Their financial house of cards collapsed under intense scrutiny from my attorney and the team of forensic accountants we hired. Offshore accounts, hidden assets, fraudulent business dealings. Everything came to light in sworn depositions that read like a comprehensive financial crime novel. Daniel's affair with Ashley became front-page gossip when she was photographed leaving his apartment building, wearing what was clearly a very expensive engagement ring. The timeline made it completely obvious their relationship had resumed months before our marriage officially ended. The social consequences were absolutely devastating for a family that lived and died by public perception and social standing. The New York Times ran a detailed business section article about Morrison Holdings' financial irregularities and questionable business practices. Longtime society friends quietly but decisively distanced themselves. Catherine's prestigious positions on several charity boards were quietly terminated. Daniel and Ashley's engagement was announced in the same week our divorce was finalized. A tone-deaf move that confirmed every suspicion about their relationship timeline. 18 months after that dinner at Skyline, I received an engraved invitation that made me laugh until tears of joy ran down my face. Catherine Morrison was formally requesting my professional services to plan her 66th birthday celebration. Apparently, desperation had completely overcome pride, and I was once again the only event planner in Manhattan capable of handling their sophisticated requirements. I declined with perfect professional courtesy, citing a completely full schedule for the foreseeable future. My business had not only survived the Morrison family drama, it had absolutely thrived. Clients who might once have looked down on me now appreciated my discretion, integrity, and refusal to be manipulated. The story that circulated through Manhattan's social circles wasn't about a woman scorned. It was about a consummate professional who refused to be used and discarded when convenient for others. 2 years after that night, I found myself planning a destination wedding in Tuscany for a power couple who wanted absolute privacy and perfection. As I stood on a terrace overlooking rolling hills with an army of vendors at my command and a celebration that would be remembered for all the right reasons, I realized something profound. I was genuinely happy. Not despite the destruction of my marriage, but because of it. The Morrison family had tried to reduce me to a disposable accessory in their grand narrative of social superiority. Instead, they had inadvertently freed me to write my own story completely on my own terms. In losing what I thought I wanted, I had discovered what I actually needed. Not acceptance from people fundamentally determined to reject me, but the courage to reject a life built entirely on their terms. I raised my glass of Prosecco to the Tuscan sunset, toasting the missing chair that had shown me exactly where I belonged, not at their table, but at my own table, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was rather than who they needed me to pretend to be. And if you've ever felt like you're fighting for a seat at a table where you're not wanted, remember this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is build your own table, and invite only the people who celebrate your presence rather than merely tolerate it. Thank you for being part of this journey of discovering that our worth isn't determined by other people's acceptance, but by our own courage to walk away from spaces that systematically diminish us. If this story resonated with your experiences, hit subscribe to join our community of people who understand that sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reconstruction, building a life so beautiful and authentic that your absence becomes their devastating loss. The missing chair wasn't a rejection, it was a liberation. And sometimes that's exactly what we need to find our way home to ourselves.